In fiscal year 2013, 83% of deportation orders came from immigration officers, not judges. In more than 363,279 of those deportations, approximately 83%, the individuals did not have a hearing, never saw an immigration judge, and were deported through cursory administrative processes where the same presiding immigration officer acted as the prosecutor, judge, and jailer. So while the percentages varied, the average across those years was about 74%, meaning 3 out of 4 deportees didn't get a hearing. It's actually backed by hard data from DHS, MPI, and the ACLU. So I ask you, where was all the outrage then? Whether you love him or hate him, Trump wasn't doing something new. He was following the playbook written long before he took office. Or consider the case of U.S. citizen Mark Little, detailed on page 49, wrongly identified as Mexican and deported. And when he tried to return, he was deported again through expedited removal. Now just imagine if that had happened under Trump. So let's be honest, if we're going to debate immigration enforcement and due process, fine. But let's do it consistently. Welcome to Boney's View. My name is Tiffany, and you are tuning in to my take episode 5. Today's episode is called Obama Deported Millions Without Due Process. So where was the outrage? And we are going to be responding to a social media post that reads as follows. During the administration of U.S. President Barack Obama, immigration authorities deported more than 3 million people, 75% to 83% of whom did not see a judge or have the opportunity to plead their case. We're going to show some receipts to determine if that post is accurate, wrong, mostly wrong, or fairly accurate. So here's the deal. According to Department of Homeland Security DHS data from fiscal years 2009 to 2016, more than 3 million individuals were formally removed from the country during the Obama administration. Annually, between 58% and 84% of these removals were so-called summary removals, carried out through legal procedures such as expedited removal and reinstatement of removal, and those don't involve a hearing before an immigration judge. On average, about 74% of removals during this period fell into those categories. And in April 2025, a claim went viral on social media. One Facebook post archived that included this claim racked up over 33,000 reactions, 7,700 comments, and 50,000 shares. It said, "Did you know? Under Obama, over 3 million people were deported, but 75 to 83% never saw a judge or had a chance to plead their case. Most were removed through expedited processes at the border, no court hearing, no trial. And this wasn't unique to Obama. Under both Clinton and Bush, millions were also deported without ever seeing a judge. So when exactly does due process matter to the media and political class? Apparently, only when it's Donald Trump in charge, or maybe just when it's someone who isn't an establishment puppet. So I ask you, where was all the outrage then? Where were the protests against Obama, Clinton, or Bush? This has been standard practice under many presidents before Trump. No president in U.S. history has ever been required to get permission from the courts or from anyone else to defend the sovereignty of their own borders. Let's break this down, starting with the question, did Obama deport more than 3 million people? Yes, officially. According to DHS statistics for fiscal years 2009 through 2016, approximately 3.1 million non-citizens were formally removed during Barack Obama's 2 terms in office. Now, keep in mind, fiscal years run from October 1st to September 30th. So fiscal year 2009 includes part of George W. Bush's term, and fiscal year 2017 includes part of Trump's. For consistency, those overlapping years were excluded from our calculations. Also, the 3.1 million figure refers only to formal removals, which is the legal term for deportation after an official order. But if you include returns, which are cases where people left voluntarily or withdrew their entry applications, then the total number of departures during Obama's time in office exceeds 5 million. So yes, the Post was correct about the 3 million figure. That's backed up by DHS and the Migration Policy Institute MPI. Now to the meat of it. Did 75% to 83% of deportees not see a judge? Let's trace where that figure came from. The 75% number appears in a 2014 MPI report called the Deportation Dilemma, page 28, which said, one of MPI's principal findings is that the deportation system has dramatically changed over the past 19 years, moving from a judicial system prior to 1996, where the vast majority of people facing deportation had immigration court hearings, to a system today of non-judicial removals, where 75% of people removed do not see a judge before being expelled from the U.S. That includes expedited removals, reinstatements of prior orders, and stipulated removals, which are signed by a judge but typically skip hearings. As for the 83% figure, that came from the ACLU in their 2014 report, American Exile, page 2. They wrote, in fiscal year 2013, 83% of deportation orders came from immigration officers, not judges. And they explained further, in more than 363,279 of those deportations, approximately 83%, the individuals did not have a hearing, never saw an immigration judge, and were deported through cursory administrative processes where the same presiding immigration officer acted as the prosecutor, judge, and jailer. That number is supported by DHS's own 2013 annual report. 44% of removals that year were expedited. 39% were reinstatements of prior removal orders. Combined, that's 83% done without a courtroom. And for those wondering what those terms mean, expedited removal is for non-citizens who lack valid entry documents or committed fraud. No court, just an immigration officer's decision. Reinstatement of removal is used when someone previously deported tries to re-enter. The old order gets reinstated again without a judge. In that same ACLU report from 2014, titled American Exile, Rapid Deportations that bypassed the law during the Obama administration, there were records of deeply disturbing incidents, yet no media outrage, no national protests. For example, on page 38, one individual reported, the officer filled out a form and asked me to sign, but I refused. They grabbed my fingers and forced them onto the paper. They were subsequently deported. Or consider the case of U.S. citizen Mark Little, detailed on page 49, wrongly identified as Mexican and deported. And when he tried to return, he was deported again through expedited removal. Yet no one talked about it. No outrage. No headlines. And that's why most of you watching this probably never even heard of these cases. Now just imagine if that had happened under Trump. So is the social media claim true? Well, the number is solid. Over 3 million people were formally deported under Obama. The percentages, 75% to 83%, are also accurate, depending on the year. In fact, here's the breakdown. In 2009, about 58% of deported individuals did not see a judge. In 2010, the figure rose to 63%. By 2011, it reached 64%. In 2012, the percentage jumped to 75%. In 2013, it increased further to 83%. In 2014, it edged up again to 84%. In 2015, the number held steady at 83%. And in 2016, it remained at 84%. So while the percentages varied, the average across those years was about 74%, meaning 3 out of 4 deportees didn't get a hearing. So when the Post says 75% to 83% didn't see a judge or plead their case, it's not just mostly true. It's actually backed by hard data from DHS, MPI, and the ACLU. So why did past administrations rely on summary removals, bypassing the courts entirely, to deport large numbers of illegal immigrants? Because that's the only practical option. The U.S. immigration court system simply isn't built to handle the sheer volume. Let's break it down. As of mid-fiscal year 2024, the backlog of immigration cases has exploded to over 3.7 million. And there are just 725 immigration judges in the entire country. That means each judge is juggling an average of 5,000 cases, an impossible load. Yes, this information is from the American Immigration Council reports that was published in August 2024. It's no wonder that the average wait time for a hearing is now more than a year and a half. Without massive funding increases and structural reforms, it's physically impossible to give every case its day in court. That's why even the Obama administration used expedited removal, because they knew the alternative would collapse the system. Now here's the twist. The Biden administration and the Democrats opened the border knowing this. They didn't expand the judiciary. They didn't build processing capacity. They let the floodgates open by design, overwhelming an already broken system. And now they're using far-left activist judges in their attempt to stonewall President Trump. It's not incompetence. It's part of a larger globalist ploy. So when people cry about due process for migrants under Trump, they need to ask, due process where? In which court? Before which judge? So what's the fix? In the short term, secure the border, which the Trump administration is already making real progress on. In the long run, some experts suggest that processing certain asylum cases administratively, rather than clogging court dockets, could ease the pressure. But ultimately, Congress must act by increasing funding to hire more immigration judges and support staff to meet the scale of the crisis. Now here's the real question. Why wasn't there more outrage back then? Why weren't there national protests when Obama, Clinton, or even Bush deported millions without court oversight? Why is it only when Trump enforces immigration law that people scream about due process? Whether you love him or hate him, Trump wasn't doing something new. He was following the playbook written long before he took office. So let's be honest. If we're going to debate immigration enforcement and due process, fine. But let's do it consistently, not just when the president has an R next to his name, or should I say, named Trump, because Bush was a Republican president, but there was no protest. You know? Because he was an establishment puppet. Trump is not. And that's the difference. If this is your first time here or you haven't been consistent with our content, go binge the rest. We've got plenty more where this came from. Thanks for tuning in to my Take Episode 5. Again, I am your girl Tiffany. Like, comment, and let us know what you think. And as always, stay sharp, stay fair, and we'll see you next time.